So how come nothing new ever happens in our life? If the quantum law works, and we know that it does, then how come we keep having the same relationships or the same jobs or the same circumstances in our life? How come it's so routine and predictable that it seems that Newtonian physics is the law? Because we haven't mastered this idea called observation. So this one particular researcher says, well, who do I know that knows how to pay attention really well? So he gets on the phone, he calls the Dalai Lama, and he says, can you send me your 8 best guys? I want to study these guys, and I want to see what happens in their brain when they're focusing on a single-minded thing like compassion or divinity or unconditional love. Now, these guys, by the way, had over 40,000 hours of focused meditation. They spent over 40 years practicing. While you were laying on the beach, they were focusing on single-minded thoughts. And then they said, let's take a control group, just a group of people that are just average people, and we'll use the monks, and we'll teach them how to do this thing called focused concentration, what science is now called paying attention. By the way, the average human being loses their attention span 6 to 10 times a minute. That's why only a few subatomic particles actually pay attention to our mind. So he said, okay, we're going to hook these guys up to these brain scans, particular ones called EEGs. And EEGs measure electromagnetic frequency that the brain emits. And so they took 256 electrodes and they covered their whole entire head. Can you picture these monks, with the things? And then they ran all the feedback into a computer that created a holographic picture of the brain, and they were able to begin to measure brain activity. They said to these monks, be your normal self. They took 8 of them, be your normal self. And then they said, okay, now listen, you guys, pay attention to compassion. Just close your eyes and pay attention to compassion. The moment they did that, all of a sudden, the frontal lobe lit up so much that the scientists had never seen that type of activity in that part of the brain. Now then they took the control group and they said, all right, you guys, pay attention to one thing. And of course, what happened? My back hurts. How long is this going to take? I don't really want to do this. Am I doing it right? I wonder what my kid's doing. I got to buy dinner, all that stuff. And guess what happened to their frontal lobe? Meh. Nothing. Nothing. Now, in one particular monk, there's a part of the frontal lobe on the left side, which is really the happy spot in the brain. And this guy's left frontal lobe was so ignited that the scientists said, this guy's got to be the happiest guy in the world. They'd never seen activity like this before. But then the scientists began to think about this, and what they said was, maybe paying attention and concentration and observation is a skill. Just like tennis or golf, and you can improve it if you keep practicing it. Now think about this. The brain is the instrument that we use. It's the machinery for us to process thought. How many people will accept that? And it also has some automatic processes that allow us to function. But for the most part, it's the greatest area in the body where there's the greatest number of neurons clustered together. And where you have the greatest number of neurons clustered together, you have the greatest intelligence. So the brain is the central clearinghouse of intelligence. Mind, by the way, is what the brain does. Mind is the brain in action. It's the brain at work. When we can measure a working brain, we're studying mind. So mind is when the brain is in action. So when we're using functional brain scans and we're studying how the brain works, we're studying this concept called mind. Then here's my question. If the brain is the instrument for intelligence or processing thought, and mind is what the brain does, if you can improve the way your brain works, who's doing the improving? And it's that nasty 13-letter word called consciousness. That's the only solution. Consciousness is our self-aware, free-willed individual that is really not the body, is not the brain, and is not the mind. As a matter of fact, consciousness is what manipulates the brain to produce mind. The brain processes 400 billion bits of information every second. But we're only aware of about 2,000 of those 400 billion bits of information. And you know what those 2,000 bits of information have to do with? 3 things, and only 3 things. The body, the environment, and time. That's it. Does your back hurt? You have a headache? Are you tired? Is it too cold in here? Is it too bright in here? Is it too dark in here? You like the way the person smells sitting next to you. You even like the person next to you. How long is this guy going to talk before we can break? And that's where all of our self-awareness is on. It's only on the body, the environment, and time. And yet billions of bits of information is being processed by the brain. Now, when we can take consciousness, self-awareness, and move it away from the body, the environment, and time, we no longer have to live by the laws of the body, the environment, and time. And when we're able to do that, we begin to open the door to walk into the quantum field.